This is the present, imperfect, and perfect tenses in Latin. The first question is, where do they come from? As you can see right here, I have several words that are listed in order. Lavi, lavare, lavi, and it means to wash. If I look in my vocabulary checklist, this is exactly how these verbs are going to show up. They're going to show up as the present first person singular, the infinitive, your perfect first person singular, and then your definition. Now, so what? Well, what that means to me is I can tell which ones to use for the present and imperfect tenses and which ones to use for the perfect tense. That's really why they list all three of those. Lavi is just where to start. That's the present first person singular. The infinitive lavare is my present stem. The present tense and the imperfect tense will both come from these infinitives right here. The perfect tense will come from these perfect stems. So if I want to create the present or the imperfect tenses, I'm going to use these guys right here. You will hear me call them the infinitive. You'll hear them called the second principal part or the present stem. Most of the time, I'm going to call it the present stem or the infinitive. But sometimes people will call it the second principal part. So that's only for the present and the imperfect tenses. I will not use it for the perfect tenses. The perfect tense will come from the perfect stem or the third principal part. That's these guys right here. That's where we will begin conjugating these verbs. You'll also notice that I have four different verbs that I'm using. There's a reason for that. I have the first conjugation, which ends in ARE. Second conjugation, which has that little long mark over the ERE. Third conjugation, which is just short ERE. And then fourth conjugation, which is IRE. The reason I have those is because all of those conjugations, the first, the second, the third, and fourth, are a little bit different as we go on. Now, how do they form? Well, you heard me call these stems. Present stem and perfect stem. And what I mean by stem is this. I take lavare and I take off this RE and I can create with this column. I told you that we can create with these guys the present and the imperfect. Well, to create the present, all I have to do is add the endings. S. I can add a T if I want to, so I could have lawas or lawat, either one, and that would mean you wash, he, she, or it washes. That's it. If we want to add the moose, the tees, and the unt, we can do that as well. So I would have we wash, you all wash, and they wash. Now all of them come from, all of these present tenses come from this present stem, which came from up here. And if you remember, it had an RE at the end of it. We took off the RE to create that stem. That's going to be the case for the other tenses as well. If I have the lera, come over here, I'm going to take off that RE. That gives me, by taking this RE off, that gives me the present stem. So I can add an S, a T, a moose, a T, or an unt to the end of that to create first person, second person, or I'm sorry, second, third, first plural, second plural, and third plural. Now, Lawo is the, oh, I'm sorry, on Delio. Delio would go right here. So I destroy, you destroy, Delet, he destroys, Lemus, Delemus, we destroy, y'all destroy, they destroy. So this one starts us off, and then this stem right here finishes us. Let's see if we can do this with the next one. Oh. The third conjugation is a little bit different. Because there's no long mark over the E, you can see these long marks right here over the vowels. Because there's no long mark over the E, you're actually removing the ERE. Okay, we start off with deco just like we did with the others. But I actually have to add I to this guy. IS, IT, IMUS, ITs, and UNT. Yeah, that UNT is a goofy one. Now, one of the ways that I remember this is by telling myself, okay, I'm not sure how that happened, telling myself that because it lost its vowel, it lost that E when the E flew away, it lost that vowel, it has to borrow a vowel. It has to borrow a vowel. Now, it borrows 4 eyes. You know, like you can't see, you have to wear glasses, you have 4 eyes. It borrows 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 eyes, and a U. That's how I remember it. Back up a little bit. I remember that he borrows 4 eyes and a U. Now, it's only for this third one where it's goofy, so don't get too upset. I go to decit, so I have I say, you say, he says, we say, y'all say, they say. So that's the third. Now, the fourth has a long mark over it, so we're in good shape as far as it's not going to be weird like the third was. So we start with Adwinera. We take off that RE, there's a long mark, so we get to keep it. Adwinio is the first person. Then we add our SRT, our moose, our T's, and our unt. We add those endings. So I get Adwenus is you arrive, he arrives. Get rid of those. We arrive, y'all arrive, and they arrive. Now, remember that I had that U, had the U from the third? It's going to show up here as well. It's going to show up here as well. So Adwini unt. So if you think about this guy, it has 1 eye, 2 eyes, 3 eyes, 4 eyes, and a U, just like the third. So the U is the only weird part about that one. Okay. Now, those are all present tenses. That's all the present tense. That's what we just did. So how do I deal with the imperfect tense? Because Coach Stramble, you told me that these guys are used for the imperfect tense as well, and they are. We're going to start off with the Lawari. We're going to take that RE off once again to get my present stem. The marker for the imperfect tense is BA. So I'm going to put that big old BA on there, okay, because that's imperfect. Once I have this, then I can add my personal endings, which are M, ST, moose, tees, and unt. Let's get rid of that, or he's too close. So I have I was washing, you were washing, he was washing, we were washing, y'all were washing, and they were washing. So all I'm doing is adding those endings. So Lawe bomb, Lawe boss, Lawe bot, Lawe bombus, bottus, and bont. Okay. Put Lawe, let's put it back where it belongs. Put the RE back on it, because that's our present stem. Delera is going to do the same thing. You're going to take that RE off and do the same thing I just did, so I'm not going to redo it. These two guys are a little bit different. Once again, I start with Dikara. I get that ERE away. If I'm going to use BA here, it's obvious that I'm missing something. You can't have Dikbom or Dikbos. It needs a vowel just like it did before. Now, the third and the fourth conjugations, these two guys, the third and the fourth conjugations are always going to act alike. This guy right here, it needs a vowel, so we're going to add E. Why E? I don't know. There's no real logical reason behind it. But then I can add my M, my S, my T, my moose, my Ts, and my unt to create my other persons. So I have this guy, DK Bomb. That would be I was saying. DK Boss, you were saying. DK Bot, you, he, she, or it was saying. DK Bomus, we were saying. Botus, y'all were saying, and then Bont, DK Bont. So it adds EBA. Well, guess what? I told you that the third and the fourths are going to act the same. Just like earlier when we had 4 I's and a U, the fourth is also going to use that EBA instead of just BA like the first two did. So we're going to start off, I'm going to go ahead and erase that. We're going to start off with Adwinera just like we did before. We're going to take that RE off. That gives us the present stem. We're going to have a BA, but the third and fourth act the same, so I'm going to have EBA. Now I can add my M, my S, my T, my moose, my Ts, and my unt. So that I will have I was arriving, you were arriving, he, she, or it was arriving, and then we were arriving, y'all were arriving, they were arriving. So this is how we form these present and the imperfect. Now, how do I form the perfect tense? Well, as I said earlier, we have two kinds of stems. We have the present stem, and then we have the perfect stem. The present stem will tell us how to create the imperfect and the present tenses. The perfect stem is how we're going to create the perfect tenses. Now we have to remember that the present stem uses O and M for the first person singular, S for the second person singular, T for the third person singular as endings. We saw that. It also uses a moose, a tis, and an unt. It uses those as what we call personal endings. And they're called personal because, well, they tell us what person is doing the action. So first person, second person, third person, singular and plural. So the subject of O and M is ego or I, S is to, you, and then T, he, she, or it. Moose uses nos, T uses wos, and NT is they. Now the personal endings for the perfect tense is different. It will use an I, an isti, it, emus, istis, and runt. These are the personal endings for the perfect tense. Again, it tells us who's in charge or who is doing the action. First person is I, second person you, he, she, or it, we, y'all, and they. Now with these endings, we can create a conjugation for the perfect tense. I'm going to keep these over here if you don't mind. I start with the perfect stem, which in this case is lawi. Well, if I can get that I down here. So that's our third principal part, our perfect stem. If I take the I off, this is my true perfect state. First person is Lawi. That is I washed. Isti is our next one. You washed. It. He, she, it washed. Moose and Tees. Oh, I forgot the I. We washed. Y'all washed. He's over here. And then, of course, we have Arendt, they washed. All of these perfect stems do the same thing. You bring the perfect stem down. You take off the I. So you have Delewi. You take off the I, and you have your perfect stem. Then you add est, it. Same thing for Dixie. You take off that I, you get Dix, Dixie, Dixisti, Dixit, Diximus, Dixistus, Dixerunt. The same thing with Adwene. Take off that I get Adwen. I add I or est, it, emus, istus, and runt to get all of my perfects. All right, hopefully you now know where or how they are formed and where they come from. Now, if you'll notice, a couple of these guys have long marks right here and right here. That's how we tell the difference between the perfect and the present. Third person singular present form for lawo is lawat, right? I take off that re and I add a t, I get lawat. Now, the third person singular for the perfect tense of lawat is lawit. Yes, it does end in it, but they are similar. That long mark right there will help you out. First conjugation, not that big a deal. However, when I get to the fourth conjugation, adwenio, this guy, adwenit is the third person singular. All right, if I start off with adwenera, oops, sorry, lost my long mark. If I start and I take off my re, I have adweni, I add a t, that's what I get. But if I have adweni, I bring it down, and I take off the I like I'm supposed to, and I add est, it, they look the same except for that long mark. So those long marks are important if they are with the perfect stem. You have to remember the long marks over those vowels because they will help you determine the difference between the two. So now we know how to form them, and we know where they come from. Next is, how do I translate them? Now, I'm only going to do third person singular of lawat. You will apply it to the rest of them because I'm going to give you a basic rule for each one. So I have lawat. How do I translate the present tense? Well, I have he washes. That's the simple present tense. And in English, we also have what's called progressive. So we use he is washing. In English, we have what's called a progressive tense, which means that there's a continuous action, is washing. So the two ways that I can translate the present tense are by using that simple present or by using is, am, or are with an ing. So if I have lawas and you as the subject, I would have you are washing. So let's see if that works out for me here. I have he. I have to use is, are, is, am, or are to create the present progressive. So he is, he am, or he are, it's he is. Now I have to have an ing form of the verb, and I have washing. Now there are, see the ing, there are irregular forms that will show up that kind of hurt us with these rules, but for the most part, this is how it works. Imperfect tense. There are multiple ways to translate the imperfect tense. We'll start off with the ones that we're most aware of. We can use he was washing. Okay? We can say the same thing in the imperfect tense by saying he kept. Instead of using was, we can say kept washing. We can do it this way as well. He began to wash, or he started to wash. There are multiple ways of translating the imperfect tense. Your basic rule is that this is a continuous action. It happens over a continuous period. Was washing is not for a second. He was washing over a period of time. He kept washing over a period of time. He began to wash and continued washing. He started to wash and continued to wash. These are all continuous action. So continuous action in the past is imperfect tense. I would suggest that you focus on was or were as the translation, and just remember that kept, began, and started are ways to translate it. Was or were is still the best way to translate the imperfect tense. So, our rule here, or something to help us translate these guys, would be our number one is to use was or were plus ing. So I would have he was, that's the was, and then the ing, washing, he was washing. The other way is the kept, so we could use kept plus the ing. We could use began plus the infinitive form, to whatever it is, and then he started. So started with to whatever the verb is. So how does that work? Well, let's see. If I have la, wa, boss, you as the subject, I have to use was or were, you was or you were, I'm going to go with were, plus the ing form of the word, which is washing. I can say you kept washing as well. I can say you began to wash, or you started to wash. All of these are continuation of action. Okay? If it were me, I always translate ba as was or were. Then, after I've done that, if kept, began, or started needs to be used instead, I will change it. But ba is was or were plus the ing form. That's the best way to remember it. You can also say used. I think that's what your book is using. Used plus to wash as well. Should have added that one. The key is continuation of action. So this one could also be he, ba. I'm going to use used plus the to form, to wash. Continuation of action. So those are the ways to translate the imperfect tense. So how do I translate the perfect tense? That's our last one before we're finished. We have the perfect tense here, lawat. We start off with the simple past. He, and then the ed, or the simple past, washed. That's it. Now we can use helping verbs if we want to. We can have he has washed. If I can spell today. He has washed. We can also say he did wash. All of those will work. So for the perfect tense, I can use has, or I can use did, either one. Hopefully that helps you out.